My name is Reagan Copeland. I am Duval Schools Family Engagement Supervisor and the proud leader of the Parent Academy program, which is who brings you this amazing webinar today. Joining us on the call, we have two experts in their field. That is probably an understatement. We have LaKanya Connor, who is a district specialist for high school counseling, and we have Karen Whitehouse, who is a current high school counselor at Inglewood High School, and they will be supporting the work of this webinar today. All right, families, it is go time. Miss Whitehouse, I'm going to hand it over to you.
There we go. So without further delay, yes, my name is Karen Whitehouse. I am a school counselor at Inglewood High School. I have typically have about 200 seniors to supervise every year, along with a section of underclassmen. And it is my honor and privilege to be able to share with you today my information compiled from the state website, from our TRIO programs, also a little bit from my personal experience. I do have a college graduate who along his journey had 3 different colleges. And so I'm hoping that you're going to find this super helpful for whichever path you want for your student. The agenda that we're going to cover today is all kinds of financial aid. So while we know that scholarships are the focus for today, we are going to try and be as thorough as we can. So we're going to define financial aid. We're going to absolutely cover the Bright Futures and discuss that. We'll talk about the FAFSA. So Bright Futures and the OSFA website, which is the Florida website, covers Florida-based scholarships, and the FAFSA covers federal-based aid and scholarships. Then we will also spend time talking about university, institutional scholarships, outside sources, and then a category that I just called, tips and real numbers, and some other things that will just give you a preview of what you can find when you're out there doing your own searching. Okay, so what is financial aid? So financial aid is any monies that are used to help pay for post-secondary expenses. Sometimes financial aid and scholarships can even be used for trade school and certification opportunities. People don't know that sometimes, and they miss out because they're saying, my student's going to do culinary, my student's going to do an electrical program at FSCJ, and they don't realize that they can also get help with those, and that a lot of times these monies are not exclusive to your traditional college experience. We will talk about, like I said, the federal, state, institutional, and private or outside sources. So those are our sources of aid, places where we can go to help pay for our students' post-secondary journey. But there are basically 3 types. There's need-based, there's merit-based. In other words, what is your students' merits? What are their test scores, their GPA, or their special talents? And then finally, there's what they call self-help. Loans and work study, even tuition reimbursement based on working a job. Those are the 3 types of aid. Let's talk about Bright Futures first. This is the main scholarship funded to students going to school in Florida who live in Florida, that is funded by the Florida Lottery. I really find that using the phone numbers and using the website is a huge help. If you look in the lower right corner, if you do call them, when you do call them, the folks there have so much knowledge. They really do want to help you. And I found that although you do have to wait, the wait was not horrible. In the box where I put a screenshot, this covers the 2 major scholarships. Now there are more, and we'll talk about that, but the main two scholarships include the Florida Academic and the Florida Medallion. The Florida Academic requires a 3.5 partially weighted GPA using the courses that are listed below in the blue box. So it's not going to include most of your elective classes. In addition to that, the student has to have one of the following test scores. And you can see the 25-26 graduate numbers. ACT is a 29, CLT 95, SAT 1330. So it is interesting that for 25-26 graduates, they're lowering the score back down a little bit. But for students who graduate this year, they need a 1340. Along with that, they have to have 100 community and or paid work hours. Those hours would be submitted to the student's counselor, who then can make sure that those are recorded in the student's transcript area. And those are then forwarded to FLDOE 3 times a year. All of these items are uploaded and updated so that way you'll have the most recent information. Just know that when the state receives these items, it is 3 times a year. So if your student isn't eligible right now for the scholarship, when they graduate or at the end of the year, then more information will get uploaded again, and they will then be able to see how your student is meeting those requirements. The scholarship listed below that is the 3.0. Again, partially weighted based on the academic subject areas listed there. The test scores are different. They're not quite as demanding. And with this one, you have an option of either 75 community service or a combination of work and community service adding up to 100. If you want help in signing up for these, each one of the schools has a program called the Beacon Program, and that's listed as item number 4 in the bullet points. We meet with your students in small groups through your English classes every single year, and we will help them to sign up, create their account, and apply for this particular scholarship. The opening period to begin signing up, you can see, is not until October 1st every single year. So we tell the kids it's like a hurry up and wait type of a situation. They're really ready to go at the beginning of the year, but we have them focus on making sure those college applications are done. And then once October rolls around, we say, okay, now if other things are done and you want to pivot, you can do this, but we will focus on it in January just to make sure that it's covered for all of our kiddos. I'm going to move on to the next slide here because it's going to address a little bit more about some of these other special interest scholarships and some of the financial aid opportunities that are there. This slide will at least show you what the very first screen that you will see when you go to the Florida financial aid application. And specifically, right next to where it says graduates, you'll see in blue first-time applicants, and under there it will say create a student account. That's where your student is going to go. Now, if they don't remember their social security number, it's okay. They can apply without it, but it's always easier to have all of these systems network and interface with each other when that is part of it. So I strongly encourage you to have your student input that, but if they don't remember it or don't have it, it will not keep them from signing up for it. Under state scholarships and grants, I did want to list other programs that are available through Bright Futures, because we will have students who will say, I'm not going to get the test scores. I won't have the service hours. Why do I need to do this? And they need to see on here that there are other scholarships available. For example, there's now a first generation matching grant. A lot of schools, if they have a first generation student, they can pair this up with other monies that they're going to offer them. Jose Marti is something that's specific for our students who have Hispanic background. There's a minority teacher education scholarship, which I'm sure would be super helpful. We always need more really good teachers. Now there's even a Florida First Responder Scholarship Program. So if you have a student who wants to be an EMT, is going to do fire science, possibly at FSCJ, these are additional programs and aid that could help your student that kind of falls into that grant scholarship type of vein, but you don't have to have those same types of test scores and GPAs in order to be eligible. Okay, so I know there's a lot more we could cover with Bright Futures. I feel like sometimes we could spend an hour just on Bright Futures and the details that go on with it. But in the interest of time, we are now going to talk about the FAFSA. This stands for the Free Application for Federal Student Aid. The FAFSA is pretty much required at all schools now for students to fill one out when it looks at eligibility for scholarships and reviewing their application. There are several different kinds of aid available. I've listed them over there on the left. Those are some samples of what's available. The federal Pell Grant is the most lucrative and is considered to be kind of like the flagship grant of FAFSA because the amount is so high. $73.05 is the max Pell Grant, and that would be per year for 4 years. So if right now the average tuition at UNF, if you're not living on campus, is about $7,500. I mean, it would even make, if you're living at home, the tuition free at a UNF school. In addition to that, there are other grants that are available. Those can be paired up with the Pell Grant. So for students who have great need, those can range from $100 to $4,000. Federal Work Study means that your student would apply and work a job at the school campus. They would have to work with their hours and their schedule, and the money that those students earn while they're there will not count against their financial aid eligibility for the following year. Direct student loans. These are low interest loans that do not accrue interest or have to be repaid until after you finish college. Okay, so make sure you're checking between subsidized and unsubsidized because there is a difference. One of them will start to accrue interest and one will not. So I just want you to be careful there. And then I just highlighted another grant. It's one of many grants, but this is the teacher one that you can apply for through federal aid as well if you want to be a teacher. Here's what the first page looks like when you sign up for the FAFSA. The first thing with any one of these is to create an account, and your student will create an account and you will have to create an account because they are going to look at the financial information for the parent or guardian and the student in order to determine what aid is going to be allowable for your student going to school. So you're going to go to studentaid.gov, and this is what that first page looks like. This screen is going to show specifically steps for the student. So we'll have a student screen and we'll have a parent screen. Keep in mind that when you fill this out, you're going to do it ahead of time because they're going to verify your account before they actually let you complete the FAFSA application. This is what the student page will look like. And when they get down towards the end of it, it even says on here, invite your parent to the FAFSA form. So there is some information that they have to fill out concerning their parents, including your email. Other required information from the student is listed here. Some of it's pretty basic, okay? And some of it is a little more unusual. For example, marital status. We actually do have some students here their senior year who are married. And so this is a question directed towards the student. And students who are married have a different filing status because they are actually considered independent. Otherwise, students, unless there are extenuating circumstances, otherwise these students are considered dependent until they're 24. Further down, you'll see that there is that dependent or independent question out there. Parents' education status, but I tell the students they can estimate. Some of our kids aren't sure, or their parents are from other countries where even the grade levels are not the same, and what the differences are between a primary and secondary, it's just not the same. So they might have to kind of guess and say, well, here's what roughly the equivalent is in US terms. They will have to consent for a transfer of tax information from the IRS. Unless they just didn't file at all. If they didn't work and they didn't file at all, there will be nothing to transfer. But they will also have to have available, if they have a checking or savings account, to provide those balances. And now we'll move on to the parent side. Just remember, though, that at the very end of this process for the student, they will be able to put in how many colleges they want to receive this information, and they'll sign it electronically. They should get an email response from financial aid in 3 to 5 days. But again, the parent has to do their side as well. Okay, let's take a look at the parent information. Parents, you're going to have to do a lot of the same on here. State of residence, your tax filing status, family size. Get all of these items out ahead of time so that you're not having to scramble to find them while you're sitting down at the computer together in the evening getting it done. You might find that your student's going to do one part, you're going to do another part, and then you're going to end up, you know, helping each other out with this to figure it out. And that's perfectly okay. It's not a hard process. But I won't lie, it's tedious, and especially the first time, it'll take you a good hour and a half to get through it. But after that, each year when you reapply, you're going to be able to cut that time in half. And it will get more doable when you're more familiar with the documents. Family size now does include the student and the dependents, even if in college. And for example, if you do have another adult living in the house, let's say you have a parent who's living with you full time, they also count as a member of your household. For checking and savings accounts, you're going to want to report whatever your amounts are after you pay all your bills and not before, because saying what it is before is not a realistic number, and you want to give them something that's more accurate. Finally, what is and is not an asset. Some people think, oh my gosh, my car is paid for. Do I need to write my car down as an asset? No. Your personal possessions, any of your retirement savings, your primary home, none of that has to be listed as an asset. The only time you would put an asset on there is if you have a rental home, you have a business, and you have the net worth. If you have a college savings account for your student, you're going to have to report that, unfortunately. Okay, but that is part of filling out the form. You will also sign in and submit, and your student will get notified from FAFSA that you did that. then schools will receive all of this information and they will process a package based on what's called the student index. The student index is the bottom number that says what they would expect the student to still have to pay given all the financial information you have provided. And in some cases, that actually can even be a negative number. That helps colleges identify who their students are with the most need. Okay. As I said earlier, you are going to do this every single year. The opening period this year is December 1st. That may change for next year. They began a new software. They used a new software program starting last year. They had several bugs in it. They still wanted to make sure that things were working. So they started it a little bit later, even though originally they wanted it to be out October 1st. So we will wait and see. But this year it started December 1. Some families think that if they offer you a loan, that you have to take it. And so I have families who are worried and scared, but I don't want a loan. I don't want to use, okay. They're going to offer you everything that is possibly available for you to be able to go and do school after high school, but you don't have to accept it. They can offer you work study. You don't have to accept it. When in doubt, call 1-800-4FED-AID. I have used them. I've used them working with students. They're extremely helpful. I did not have to wait online for forever. It's really good for us to be able to model for our students what it looks like when you're doing these adult tasks and how you're communicating with these people on the phone. Your students are very reluctant to do this. It's really scary for them. I really encourage you guys to do this together so you can begin to model what that looks like for your student. Now, if your student hasn't created their FSA ID yet, they haven't created their account yet, we are also going to do that in the Beacon program. These are coming up in January and February at the schools. I know here at Englewood, we've been messaging out to students since October, roughly when we were going to do that. And this week, all of their English teachers have gotten the firm dates for and the scheduling for the Beacon program here at Englewood, which is going to be the 28th to the 31st. FAFSA is going to be based on your taxes from the 2023 year. You don't have to wait until your taxes are filed for 2024 anymore, okay? They're going back a year further. So if you had a prior student who you had that other system and they were looking at the taxes from immediately in the prior year, they are no longer doing that. Check your email regularly. This is how colleges will communicate with your student about financial aid packages. And I always tell the kids, if you don't hear back from the school and you know you've been accepted, but you don't hear anything about financial aid, please call the financial aid department at the school. And again, that's what they're there for. Without you calling and without you doing all of this, I mean, it's their job. Without that, they wouldn't have a job. The amount offered to you is going to be different at each school. Okay, so you won't get just a flat amount and have it not matter whether or not it's UNF or UCF or UF. You know, all of these schools, even though they're state schools, they have a little bit of a different setup. They are going to offer their own types of scholarships to in-house and types of aid, so they are not going to look the same. Okay, a lot of you I know were really, interested looking at what we call all of these outside sources. Outside sources are these institutional scholarships and outside organizations that can offer scholarships and aid to help pay for schools. So The institutional aid is going to really just mean scholarships and grants that colleges offer to offset the price of the school. They are found on the website, and I'm going to show you a sample in just a minute. They can be merit and need based. So you might find some on there that are strictly merit based. It doesn't matter if you have financial need. You might find some others that are more need based, and they'll explain it specifically on the website for the school itself. Number 2, outside organizations will include civic groups, Rotary, faith-based groups, college sorority and fraternity groups. We include information from these organizations on our Instagram that we have. We tell the students about it. We post it on Teams. We even put hard copies still on a bulletin board in our offices. Kids have a whole lot going on senior year. So even our most academic students generally, need a little bit of a push when it comes to these additional scholarships. But they are out there. Sometimes even your place of employment offers scholarships or tuition, and the smaller scholarships generally don't have as many students who apply. So I want your student to absolutely look at those scholarships that are 250 and 500. And, the realization when it starts, coming out of that checkbook is that, $500 is a game changer, right? So please have your student look at those smaller scholarships as well. All right, so here's a page that I'm sure you're interested in. This is just a listing of financial aid resources and possible scholarships. There are some scholarship engines on here, and you're going to find dozens when you look online. And so we just decided to highlight a few of these for you. Scholly Scholarships is great. Sallie Mae was long ago one of the main funders for student aid. They are still out there, and they have their own scholarship page. Scholarshipguidance.com, best scholarships for Florida. I think the list goes on and on. You can even Google different kinds of scholarships online and find there's a scholarship for just about everything. Okay, the next thing I wanted to show you here is a university's parent page on social media. So when my son went to school, I was combing through, the social media and saw that his university has a parents page, an official parents page. And the information that I got just from the parents was so helpful. It really, really opened up a new world for me in terms of even activities going on campus, finding out what the school calendar looked like, what their athletics were, the academic calendar. And then that way, I kind of felt like I knew what was going on without being in my kid's hip pocket all the time, right? They want you to leave them alone and let them do their own thing, even though you're most likely helping to pay for it, and you still get the bill while they go to school. So I found the parents page was great, and I could even do a search on the parent page and say, looking for information about paying for school. So here is one parent who is an anonymous member. The student's concerned about how much she's going to owe when she graduates. We can't afford to pay this, and we know she'll need loans. What is the best way to help her keep that bottom number at a minimum? And there are 163 comments back. Dozens and dozens of ideas. There are parents on here who are sharing, I'm so excited my student got in, and now that they have, we're grappling with, you know, how are we really going to take care of this? Some of the examples I will tell you just of what these folks talked about in these comments, because of course, as a counselor, I'm still very, very interested in all the unique ways people pay for school. So some of these parents said, I even went to work for the university, and that way my student could go to school at half price. I had parents who said, we know we can't do this, so I made a deal with my student that if their grades look like this, if they just got A's and B's at the local community college, then we would find a way to make the last 2 years happen and have my student be able to live on campus. Some of them took it a year at a time and had their student do work study, or then later on they would apply for what's called an RA position. An RA is a resident assistant. It is a person who lives in the dorm, who has responsibilities to other students on the hall. And a lot of times, if your student gets that position, their room and board at the college for that year is free. Well, that's about $10,000 a year in most situations. Some of the parents talked about ROTC scholarships. Other parents talked about their student being in the military first. Other parents talked about, oh, my student worked at Chick-fil-A last year, and I found out that if they were going to college, they would put $2,500 towards my student at their school for the next year. So there are dozens and dozens of different ways you can put things together to make this a reality, along with those scholarships. I would absolutely encourage you to get out there on some of the schools' parent pages and start combing through these to see what other people are doing. I really did find it incredibly, incredibly helpful just to see the creativity that some of these parents brought to the table in making sure that whatever their student was going to end up doing, that they were maxing out on how they could make this a reality for their child. Next, here is what the UNF scholarship first page looks like. So if you go to Google and you say UNF scholarships, it brings up the school main scholarship page. And then I clicked on this. And again, these are institutional and not outside scholarships. And it will tell you if your student has this GPA and this test score, here's how much they're going to get per year, as long as they maintain decent grades at the school. Okay, now at the bottom, it says, how do I apply for these scholarships? No separate application is required. This is a very lucrative scholarship opportunity. But just like in life, the early bird gets the worm here. Priority consideration is given to students who have applied and been accepted by January 15th. None of these schools have pockets of money that go into infinity and beyond. If your student waits and waits and waits and procrastinates and doesn't get the stuff done, then they might be eligible, but the school's out of money. And there just isn't any more left to give for a student who applies in March and is eligible for a President's Platinum Scholarship. It's going to be, where have you been? What's going on? Why did you wait this long? We wish we could have offered you this, but our money in this category is done for this year. We're out of it. There are several other scholarships that are listed on here. You can dig into those. I'm sure you could highlight and link to those on their page, but I really felt like in order to do my due diligence, I needed to dig in here and actually show you what some of these pages look like. Here's some real numbers just as a sample for you, and I think we're almost done. I might have one more slide. College tuition costs this year for a full-time student at FSCJ is $3205, about $3,200. So for most of my students, if they work a part-time job year-round, if they work a part-time job, they can pay for this. And even if they weren't eligible for anything, they could pay for 2 years at FSCJ. Most public four-year schools, the average price per student, state of Florida for the year is $6,113. I think it's about right. There is something that's lower or higher. Private schools on average, full-time per year cost for a student, $39,400. Just remember that when you're looking at some of the private school numbers, even though they're a lot higher, they also offer more scholarships and more grant opportunities. So the price that you see is not necessarily the real price. Yes, a lot of them are more by a lot. However, you still have to look at the fine print and see what you're able to make happen for your student. Fortunately, here in Florida, we have a lot of really great state schools as well, and we've got a ton of opportunities no matter which way you look. So unless you're, if you're looking at Ivies in the Northeast, that's another story. But in the state of Florida, we have so many great options. All right, so here's UNF as our sample school. If they live at home, $63.98 was the amount for tuition. Housing and food, $10,000. So that's the large part of the cost. Books and supplies, transportation, miscellaneous. Pell Grant, $73.95 for a max Pell Grant. So when you're bouncing around all these numbers, this one page is going to kind of give you a sample of what things are really going to cost if you're just not sure. Okay, I think we are about there, almost. Deadlines and dates, special circumstances. This is kind of a rehash of some of what we talked about earlier so that you could just see it all on one page. Schools have varying deadlines for FAFSA. And like I said earlier, the sooner you get it complete, the better. Schools do run out of money. Here, I'm just encouraging you again to make this a team effort with your student. I know how busy everyone is, but this is so new for your student. And if you wait for them to really take the initiative here, I think you're going to be waiting for a while because it just is so brand new and it's scary. They don't want to make mistakes. So even if you're figuring it out together and making these calls, I think you're all going to be happier with the results. Again, they do want to help you. College and financial aid partners, without you, they do not have a job. So please communicate with them and us to get your questions and concerns addressed. Okay, I am hoping that I covered as much as I could and gave you all the information that you feel like is going to help you.
We hope that you received the information you were looking for, perhaps more than you thought you were looking for. If you have follow-up questions, you are always able to reach out to me, and I can certainly help connect you. Ms. Whitehouse is busy at school, but I know that she will pause and take a moment to answer any question you may have. Otherwise, we are incredibly grateful for you joining this Parent Academy webinar. Thrilled to have you and hope that you will return back to us again in the near future for an upcoming Parent Academy webinar in the future. Take care, everyone. Have a wonderful day, and thanks again.